Captain Hansol stood at the command center of the Galactic Defense Station, his eyes fixed on the massive display screen in front of him. Red dots kept appearing across the map of the outer colonies. Each dot meant another report of something unusual, something that made no sense to him or his fellow officers. "Sir, we have another report from Colony 7, said Lieutenant Duha, her voice shaking slightly. "They say the new species, the humans, they're not like anything we've seen before." Hansol walked closer to her station. "Show me." The screen changed to show a recording from a security camera. The footage showed what looked like a simple training exercise between the colony's defense forces and a group of human soldiers. But what Hansol saw made him step back in surprise. The human soldiers moved with incredible speed and strength. They carried heavy equipment that would tire most species, yet they ran as if it weighed nothing. When faced with obstacles, they didn't just overcome them. They found creative ways around them that nobody had thought possible. "These are their regular soldiers?" Hansol asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, sir. Just standard human military units," Duha confirmed. "They call them regular forces." More reports kept coming in from other colonies. Each told the same story. Human soldiers displaying abilities that matched or exceeded the capabilities of most species' best warriors. They could fight for days with little rest. They adapted to any situation quickly. They thought in ways that seemed impossible to predict. Commander Jaiwan arrived at the station 3 days later. She had been chosen to lead the diplomatic mission to the humans. Her job was to find out if they wanted to be friends or enemies. Hansol met her in the briefing room. "Have you seen the reports?" he asked. Jaiwan nodded. Her face showed concern. "I have. That's why I've arranged a joint training exercise. We need to see these humans up close." The training exercise was set up on Colony 9, a planet with harsh conditions. The temperature changed from very hot to very cold within hours. The air was thin, making it hard to breathe. Most species needed special equipment just to survive there. The human soldiers arrived in simple transport ships. They wore basic protective gear, nothing fancy. Commander Jaiwan watched as they stepped out, looking completely comfortable despite the difficult conditions. "Welcome to Colony 9, she said to their leader, Captain Kim Soo of the Human Defense Force. "We hope this exercise will help us understand each other better." Kim Soo smiled. It was a friendly smile, but something about it made Jaiwan nervous. "We look forward to training with your forces, Commander," he said in perfect galactic standard language. The exercise started simple enough. Both sides had to reach a target point while dealing with various challenges. Ji-1's best teams went first. They did well, finishing the course in what she considered excellent time. Then the human soldiers started their run. What happened next changed everything Ji-1 thought she knew about combat capabilities. The humans didn't just complete the course. They practically danced through it. They carried loads that should have been impossible to lift. They communicated without speaking, moving as one unit. When faced with a wall, they didn't just climb it. They found 3 different ways over, under, and around it, all at the same time. "Captain Kim Soo," Jaiwan said, trying to keep her voice steady, "your soldiers are impressive. They must be among your best units." Kim Soo looked confused for a moment. "Oh no," he said with that same smile. "These are just regular forces. Basic training, nothing special." Jaiwan felt her heart skip a beat. "Nothing special," she repeated. "Of course," Kim Soo said. "These are just standard soldiers. You should see our special forces if you want to be impressed." The exercise ended early that day, not because of any problem, but because Jaiwan needed to send an urgent message to Galactic Command. As she wrote her report, her hands trembled slightly. "First contact with human military forces reveals concerning information," she wrote. "Their regular forces display combat capabilities matching or exceeding our most elite units. Subject demonstrates unprecedented adaptability, endurance, and tactical innovation. Most concerning detail, These are reportedly not their elite warriors. Hansol read the report later that night. He looked out the window of his office, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, an entire species existed whose regular soldiers were as good as his best warriors. And they had something even better. These special forces, they mentioned. Send all information to High Command. He ordered Dua. Mark it as highest priority. We need to know more about these humans, and especially about their special forces. As the message was sent, Hansol couldn't help but wonder. If these were their regular forces, what kind of warriors were their special ones? The answer, he suspected, would change everything they thought they knew about warfare. That night, in bases across the galaxy, military commanders read the reports about human regular forces. They studied the videos, analyzed the data, and came to the same conclusion. They had discovered something both amazing and terrifying. A species whose basic soldiers could outfight their best warriors. And somewhere, in classified human military bases, the special forces continued their own training. Training that would soon show the galaxy why regular human forces were scary enough on their own. News spread quickly through the Galactic Defense Network. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves sharing information, trying to understand these humans better. Their regular forces had done something unprecedented. They had scared the galaxy into cooperation. On Colony 9, Captain Kim Soo watched his soldiers pack up their equipment. They moved with the same efficient grace they showed in everything they did. He sent his own report back to Human Command. Training exercise successful. Galactic species showed expected reaction to regular forces capabilities. They haven't asked about special forces yet, but they will. Recommend preparing appropriate demonstration when they do. As the human ships left Colony 9, Commander Jai-1 stood with Captain Hansol, watching them disappear into the darkness of space. "What do we do now?" she asked. Hansol took a deep breath. "We prepare," he said. "We learn everything we can about them. And we hope they want to be friends. And if they don't?" Hansol didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew that if humans decided to be enemies, having warriors this capable as their regular forces meant only one thing. The galaxy wasn't ready for what their special forces could do. The first contact with humans had gone well, technically. No fights had broken out. No wars had started. But every military leader who read the reports knew something important had changed. The galaxy had just discovered that its definition of elite warrior needed to be updated. Because somewhere out there, an entire species existed whose regular soldiers were good enough to be anyone else's elite forces, and they had something even better in reserve. The galaxy would soon learn why humans called their elite warriors special forces, because their regular ones were scary enough already. Military advisor Sunma sat in her secure office deep within the Galactic Council headquarters. 3 months had passed since the first contact with humans, and now she faced a new challenge. The Nexus Dominion, an aggressive empire from the outer regions, had started causing trouble along the borders. The Council Chamber's emergency meeting was set to begin in 1 hour. On Sunma's desk sat a datapad containing something that could change everything. Classified footage of human special forces in action. She had received it just this morning. Sunmi touched the screen, and the recording began to play. The footage showed a military base on an ice planet. Through the swirling snow, she could see Nexus Dominion pirates who had taken control of the facility. They had advanced weapons, heavy armor, and strong defenses. A normal attack would have required hundreds of soldiers. But this recording didn't show hundreds of soldiers. It showed only 4 humans. Sun Mai leaned closer, making sure she wasn't missing anything. The humans wore black armor that seemed to blend with the shadows. They moved in ways that seemed impossible, even compared to regular human soldiers. While normal human troops were impressive, these operators seemed to break the laws of physics. The 4-person team cleared the entire base in less than 20 minutes. They moved so fast that the security cameras barely caught them. The pirates, who had successfully fought off elite forces from 3 different species, never even knew what hit them. Impossible, Sun Mai whispered. But she had watched it 3 times now. It was real. Her communication device buzzed. "Advisor Sun Mai," said a familiar voice. "Captain Tai Yang of the Human Special Forces has arrived for the briefing." Sun Mai took a deep breath. "Send him in." Captain Tai Yang didn't look special when he walked into her office. He wore a simple black uniform with no medals or decorations. He moved quietly, but in a natural way that made you almost forget he was there. That itself was strange, Sun Mai realized. Most elite warriors couldn't help but show their power. "Thank you for coming, Captain," Sun Mai said. "I've just reviewed the footage from Operation Winter Shadow." Tai Yang nodded. "The ice base mission. That was a simple operation." Sun Mai stared at him. "Simple. Your team of 4 defeated 60 heavily armed pirates in 20 minutes. 17 minutes, Tai Yang corrected gently. And it wasn't difficult. The pirates expected a large attack force. They weren't prepared for a small team. Before Sun Mai could respond, her emergency alert system activated. A holographic display showed a serious situation developing in the Centauri sector. Pirates had taken control of 3 trade stations. They had already defeated the local defense forces. "How many pirates?" Tai Yang asked, studying the display. "Early reports suggest at least 300, Sun Mai said. "We'll need to organize a large response force. It could take days too." "No need," Tai Yang interrupted. "I have a team standing by. We can handle it." Sun Mai looked at him in shock. "Captain, there are 300 pirates spread across 3 stations. Even for human regular forces, that would be." "We'll need 6 hours, Tai Yang said. "Maybe 7 if we stop for lunch." He wasn't joking. Sun Mai could see it in his eyes. "The council meeting starts in an hour," she said. "They're voting on whether to invite humans into the alliance. This situation will be resolved before they finish voting." Tai Yang promised. He touched his communication device. "Team, deploy to Centauri sector. Standard cleanup operation." Sun Mai watched as a small human ship departed from the nearby station. It carried 8 special forces operators against 300 pirates. The council meeting began as scheduled. The members discussed the benefits and risks of allowing humans to join their alliance. Some worried that human military power might be too strong. Others argued that having humans as friends was better than having them as enemies. Halfway through the meeting, Sun Mai received an update from the Centauri sector. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood correctly. All 3 stations had been recaptured. Total operation time: 4 hours and 23 minutes. The pirates had been captured or neutralized. Property damage was minimal. There were no civilian casualties. "How?" one council member asked when Sun Mai reported the news. "How did they do it?" "They're special forces," she replied simply. The vote to invite humans into the alliance passed unanimously. Nobody wanted to risk having these warriors as enemies. Later that day, Sun Mai met with Tai Yang again. He had returned from the Centauri operation, looking as calm and relaxed as before. "The council is very impressed," she said. "They want to know more about how your special forces operate." Tai Yang smiled slightly. "We just do our job, advisor. Nothing special about it." "Nothing special." Sun Mai shook her head. "Your regular forces already match our best elite units. And your special forces, you make impossible things look easy. That's why we're called special forces," Tai Yang explained. "Because regular forces are scary enough on their own. When you need something beyond scary, that's when you call us." Sun Mai thought about the footage she had watched that morning, about the reports from the Centauri operation, about how 8 operators had defeated 300 pirates in the time it took most species to plan an operation. "The galaxy isn't ready for what you can do, is it?" she asked quietly. "No," Tai Yang agreed. "But we're not here to frighten anyone. We're here to help, to protect. That's what special forces do." As Tai Yang left her office, Sun Mai began updating the galactic military archives. She created a new section about human military capabilities. Under regular forces, she wrote equal to or exceeding most species elite units. Then she came to the section about special forces. After a long moment, she simply wrote, beyond normal classification systems, capability limits unknown. That night, as news of the Centauri operation spread, military commanders across the galaxy had the same thought. If these were the special forces, then it made perfect sense why regular human forces were considered scary enough. In his quarters, Captain Taiyang prepared his mission report. It was short and simple. Operation completed within expected parameters. No complications. Team performed adequately. Adequately. Because for human special forces, doing the impossible was just another day at work. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Nexus Dominion received the reports about what had happened in the Centauri sector. Their military leaders looked at the footage, studied the data, and reached a frightening conclusion. They had severely underestimated what humans were capable of. They had thought human regular forces were impressive. Now they understood why those regular forces were considered scary enough. Because what came after scary was something the galaxy wasn't prepared to face. The humans had a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. But as Sunma looked at the footage one last time before sealing it in the classified archives, she wondered, how do you prepare for warriors who make the impossible look routine? The answer, she realized, was simple. You make sure they're on your side. Because human regular forces were scary enough on their own. And their special forces, they were something else entirely. The Nexus Dominion attacked at dawn. Their ships appeared from hyperspace without warning, striking 5 Galactic Council worlds at once. Colonel Minji of the Human Regular Forces watched the reports come in from her command center on Station 7. They'd broken through the outer defenses, Lieutenant Hayan reported. Council forces are falling back on all fronts. Minji studied the tactical display. The Dominion had brought their strongest fleet, nearly 10,000 ships. They had planned this attack carefully, choosing targets that were far from the main Council defense bases. How long until reinforcements arrive? Minji asked. The nearest Council fleet is 3 days away, Hayan answered. We're the only significant force in range. Minji commanded just 200 human soldiers, regular forces, not special forces, against a Dominion assault force of over 50,000 troops. Most commanders would have retreated. But Minji wasn't most commanders, and these weren't ordinary soldiers. Send word to all units, she ordered. We're going to show the Dominion why human regular forces are considered scary enough. The first battle took place on Green World, a farming planet with vast fields and scattered settlements. The Dominion landed 30,000 troops, expecting an easy victory. They had fought Council forces before and knew how many soldiers they usually needed to win. But they had never fought human regular forces in a major battle. Minji's troops moved in small teams, using the terrain in ways the Dominion hadn't thought possible. They fought for 3 days straight without rest, appearing where they weren't expected, striking in ways that made no sense until it was too late. How are they still fighting? A captured Dominion officer asked. They haven't slept in 3 days. They barely eat. It's not possible. We're human regular forces, Private Junseo told him with a tired smile. This is what we do. On the second world, Ice Haven, 15,000 Dominion troops found themselves facing 40 human soldiers in the frozen wastes. The Dominion commanders laughed when they heard the numbers. Their laughter stopped when those 40 soldiers somehow managed to defeat an entire army division in less than 2 days. They adapt to everything we do, a Dominion general reported to his superiors. We change tactics, they change faster. We set traps, they turn them against us. These are supposed to be regular forces. The Third World saw the most intense fighting. The Dominion committed their elite guard units, warriors who had never known defeat. They fought with skill and courage, using strategies that had won 100 battles. They lost in 6 hours. It doesn't make sense, the Dominion commanders said in their reports. Their regular forces fight like elite units. They do things that should be impossible. But impossible had become normal where human forces were concerned. Minji's troops continued to fight, continued to win, and continued to surprise everyone except themselves. Then came the news that changed everything. "Colonel," Hayan called out, her voice tense, "we've intercepted Dominion communications. They're preparing to deploy something called the World Breaker." The tactical display showed a massive ship emerging from hyperspace. It carried a weapon that could destroy entire planets, turning them into asteroid fields with a single shot. "They're targeting civilian worlds," Hayan reported. "Billions of lives at risk." Minji looked at the data and knew that this time, being scary wasn't enough. Regular forces, no matter how capable, couldn't stop a weapon of that size. Not in time. "Send the code," she ordered quietly. "Request Special Forces deployment. Authorization. Crisis override." The response came back instantly. Special Forces Team Echo launching. Commander Yunho leading. Regular forces to provide diversion. Minji gathered her troops and explained the situation. They had fought for days, achieved the impossible, and saved 3 worlds. Now they had to do something even harder. They had to make the Dominion look at them instead of watching for special forces. "They know how dangerous we are now," she told her soldiers. "So we're going to be even more dangerous, even more scary. We're going to make so much noise that they won't hear special forces coming." The next 12 hours saw the most impressive display of human regular forces capability that the galaxy had ever witnessed. Minji's troops launched simultaneous attacks on 5 different Dominion positions. They fought with such intensity that the Dominion had to commit more and more forces to contain them. "Watch the regular forces," Dominion commanders ordered. "Don't let them surprise us again." They were so busy watching the regular forces that they didn't notice the small special forces ship slipping through their defenses. In her command center, Minji received a simple message: "Package delivered. Continue operation." She smiled, knowing what was coming. Because if regular forces were scary enough to make the Dominion commit everything to stopping them, they were about to learn why humans needed special forces at all. The World Breaker never fired its weapon. In fact, it never did anything again. When the Dominion commanders finally got inside, they found all the control systems destroyed with surgical precision. Key components had vanished. The most heavily defended weapon in their arsenal had been reduced to space junk by a team they never even saw. "How many Special Forces troops did this?" a Dominion admiral demanded. The answer, when it finally came, made him sit down in shock. 6 operators. They were in and out in 45 minutes. The crisis ended 3 days later. The Dominion fleet retreated, having learned 2 terrible lessons. Human regular forces were as dangerous as everyone said, and their special forces were something else entirely. In her final report to the Council, Minji wrote, "Regular forces performed as expected, proving sufficient to handle standard combat operations and provide effective diversion for special forces deployment." Additional note: troops complain that next time, they want to try something really challenging. The Council representatives read her report in silence. They had known human regular forces were impressive. Now they had seen it proved in the largest battle since first contact. And they had seen why, sometimes, even forces that scary needed backup. "Colonel," one council member asked, "your troops fought for days without rest, defeated armies many times their size, and achieved things our best units would call impossible. How can you call that just performing as expected?" Minji smiled. "Because we're regular forces," she said. "When you need something really special, that's why we have special forces." The member looked at the reports again. "And these special forces, they're even more capable than your regular forces. That's why we call them special forces," Minji explained. "Because regular forces are scary enough already." As she left the council chamber, Minji received a message from Commander Yunho of the Special Forces. "Good work keeping them busy. Sorry we took so long with the World Breaker. Stop for coffee on the way back." Min-jae laughed. Because that was the real difference between regular forces and special forces. Regular forces did the impossible as a matter of duty. Special forces did it with style. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Dominion's leaders looked at the reports of what had happened. They saw how human regular forces had fought, how they had won against impossible odds. And they understood, finally, why those regular forces were considered scary enough. Because anything that needed warriors even more capable than that, well, that was special indeed. Commander Yunho stood in the briefing room of the Special Forces command ship. Around him, 29 other operators waited silently. They had just received their mission details for Operation Silent Storm, and even these elite warriors felt the weight of responsibility on their shoulders. The Dominion's superweapon facility is here, Yunho said, pointing to a holographic display, built inside an artificial moon. 5,000 guards. Advanced security systems. They say it's impossible to break in. Captain Do-hyun, his second-in-command, studied the details. Impossible is what regular forces handle, sir. What makes this special? They have 3 more world breakers nearly complete, Yunho answered. If even one launches, billions die. We have 12 hours to shut down all 3. The room stayed quiet. They had trained for missions like this. But this would be the biggest operation in Special Forces history. Regular forces were keeping the Dominion busy across 20 star systems, but this mission would determine the fate of the war. Remember, Yunho said softly, regular forces are scary enough to keep them distracted. We need to be something more, something special. They moved out at midnight, station time. 3 small ships, painted in light-absorbing black, slipped through the Dominion's defense grid. They used paths that should have been impossible to navigate, moving in ways that denied physics itself. Control, this is Colonel Min-jae, came a transmission. Regular forces are beginning primary distraction. Good hunting, Special Forces. Across the battle zone, human regular forces launched a massive attack. They hit 30 different targets simultaneously, drawing every Dominion ship and soldier away from the artificial moon. It was the kind of operation that would become legendary on its own. Regular forces once again doing the impossible. But this time, they were just the opening act. Yunho's team split into 3 groups. They didn't use the entrance points. They didn't try to hack the security systems. Instead, they simply went through places where the Dominion engineers had decided no one could possibly go. Sir, Do-hyun reported over their secure channel. Team 2 has reached Objective Alpha. You were right. They never guarded the plasma conduits because they thought the radiation would kill anyone who tried. Good, Yunho replied. Team 3. Already inside the main reactor core, came the response. They really should have made these cooling vents smaller. The Dominion's security systems were designed to detect any normal intrusion, but they hadn't prepared for operators who could hold their breath for 15 minutes while swimming through coolant pipes. They hadn't planned for soldiers who could climb through radiation zones in specially designed suits. They hadn't expected warriors who could move so quietly that motion sensors read them as equipment malfunction. They had prepared for elite forces. They had even prepared for human regular forces, but they hadn't understood what Special Forces truly meant. The first sign that something was wrong came when World Breaker 1's control center went dark. The Dominion commander scrambled to respond, but by then World Breaker 2 was already being systematically dismantled from the inside. Intruder alert, the automated systems finally announced. Unknown forces detected in. The announcement cut off as the entire communications network crashed. In the central control room, Dominion officers stared at their screens in disbelief. Somehow, intruders had penetrated their most secure facility. Somehow, they were taking it apart piece by piece. Send in the elite guard, the facility commander ordered. All 5,000. Find them. But finding Special Forces operators who didn't want to be found was like trying to catch shadows with a net. The elite guard found only empty rooms, disabled systems, and occasional glimpses of black armored figures that moved too fast to track. Sir, Da-hyun reported to Yoon-ho. Team 2 has completed their objective. All data cores secured. Moving to assist Team 3. Understood, Yoon-ho replied. He was currently hanging upside down in an elevator shaft, carefully removing key components from the facility's main power distribution node. Tell them to save some fun for us. The Dominion commanders watched in horror as their superweapon facility, the most heavily defended installation in their territory, was systematically taken apart from the inside. Their elite guards, the best warriors they had, couldn't even find the intruders, let alone stop them. How many enemy troops are there? The facility commander demanded. The security chief checked the sensors again. We think 30, sir. 30. The commander slammed his fist on the table. We have 5,000 guards. How can 30 operators do this? Sir, the security chief said quietly, they're human special forces. Understanding dawned in the commander's eyes. They had all heard the stories. They had all seen what human regular forces could do, and now they were facing something even more capable. 10 hours after they began, Yoon-ho's team regrouped at their extraction point. The facility's power was dead. The world breakers were unusable. Every critical system had been disabled with surgical precision, and they had downloaded the entire database of Dominion military secrets. All teams report mission complete, Da-hyun announced. Total casualties, 0. Total time, 10 hours, 17 minutes. Shame about the time, Yoon-ho said with a small smile. We're getting slow in our old age. As they prepared to leave, Yoon-ho activated the facility's emergency broadcast system. In every room, on every speaker, his message played. This is Commander Yoon-ho of the Human Special Forces. Your facility has been neutralized. Your weapons are disabled. Your secrets are compromised. Remember this. If human regular forces are scary enough to keep 5 fleets busy, imagine what we can do when we decide to be special. The message wasn't really necessary. The legend of Operation Silent Storm would spread on its own. Stories would be told about how 30 Special Forces operators had dismantled the most secure facility in the Dominion, about how they had moved like ghosts, struck like lightning, and vanished like smoke. 3 days later, the Dominion surrendered. Their peace treaty included one very specific clause: no deployment of human special forces against their territories. They had learned their lesson. Regular forces were scary enough. Special forces were something else entirely. In her final update to the Galactic Military Archive, Advisor Sunmei wrote a new entry. Operation Silent Storm confirms previous assessments. Human regular forces remain classified as equal to or exceeding most species' elite units. Human special forces remain beyond conventional classification. Note: when asked about the operation's difficulty, Commander Yoon-ho rated it as moderately interesting. Further questions were deemed unnecessary. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Human regular forces were scary enough to win wars, defeat armies, and achieve the impossible. They were elite warriors by any normal standard. But sometimes, scary wasn't enough. Sometimes, you needed something more, something special. That's why humans called their elite warriors special forces. Because when regular forces were already scary enough to terrify the galaxy, you needed a special kind of warrior to go beyond scary. And in secure bases across human space, those special forces continued their training. They didn't celebrate their legend. They didn't boast about their achievements. They simply prepared for the next time the galaxy needed something more than scary. Because that's what made them special.